The Emperor's Handbook, Book 9. 1. He sins who acts unjustly. All rational creatures, by nature's deep design and purpose, are created for one another. They are meant to help those who deserve help and in no way to harm one another. He who shrugs off the will of nature sins against the oldest of the gods. He who tells lies sins against the same God. Nature is the basis for everything that is, and everything that is intimately connected with everything that ever was. Truth is just another name for nature, the first cause of everything. He who lies with the intent of deceiving another sins by acting unjustly. But he who lies unintentionally sins by striking a discordant note with nature, and by opposing the profound harmony of the universe. By opposing the truth, even unwittingly, the liar declares war on nature and loses, through neglect, his God-given ability to discern what is true and what is false. He also sins who pursues pleasures as if they were good and flees hardships as if they were evil. Seeing how often evildoers enjoy pleasures and acquire things that bring pleasure, while decent folks suffer hardships and encounter things that cause pain. This sort of person cannot help but blame nature for handing out pleasures and hardships indiscriminately. Moreover, the person afraid of hardships is at odds with something that is going to happen as part of the natural order of things, and this is sinful. Likewise, the person panting after pleasure will not hesitate to act unjustly, and this is clearly sinful. Nature would not provide for both pleasures and hardships were she not indifferent to both. And those who would follow nature and be of one mind with her must be indifferent when she is indifferent. Whoever then fails to follow nature by being indifferent to hardship and pleasure, death and life, obscurity and fame, that person obviously offends the gods. Now, by saying that nature uses these things indifferently, I mean that all things follow from one another in a sequence begun by the original impulse of providence and continued in accordance with certain ordering principles and generative powers such as matter, change, and succession. 2. It would be best never to have tasted deceit, hypocrisy, luxury, and pride. But the next best course would be, despising these things, to push away from the table. Do you choose instead to persist in these evils? Has experience not convinced you to flee this plague? Is not the corruption of your mind and soul a plague far more deadly than any pollution or contamination in the air you breathe? This plague attacks us only as animals, but that destroys our humanity. 3. Don't fear death, but give it a friendly greeting. Nature sends it along with everything else. Like youth and old age, growing up and reaching one's prime, growing teeth and a beard and white hair, begetting and conceiving and bearing children. Our dissolution is just one of life's natural processes. A man who has given it any thought will never approach death carelessly, hastily, or scornfully, but he will wait for it as he would for any natural process. As you now wait for the unborn child to burst from your wife's womb, so should you anticipate the moment when your soul will slip from its shell. But if your trembling heart needs a cruder form of reassurance, consider the worth of the material objects you're leaving behind, and the morals of those with whom you'll no longer have to associate. Although it's your job to treat them gently and compassionately, and not to criticize them, it's fair to bear in mind that you're not parting from like-minded men. This alone, if nothing else, could drag you back from the brink of death and force you to go on living, the company of kindred spirits. But as it is, so great is the weariness of living in discord with your fellow men that you say, "Come quickly, death, lest I, like them, forget myself. 4. The sinner sins against himself. The unjust person does injustice to themselves by making themselves bad. 5. Injustice results as often from not doing as from doing. 6. It is enough when you are thinking objectively, behaving courteously, and feeling easy about circumstances outside your control. 7. Blot out imagination, restrain impulse, stifle desire, give your reason the upper hand. 8. One vital spirit is distributed among the animals, and one rational spirit is allotted to humankind. There is also one earth for all creatures that live on the earth, and share a single light by which they see, and a single atmosphere by which they breathe. 9. Things that share a common element or characteristic are naturally drawn to one another. Earthy objects gravitate toward the earth, and fluids tend to flow together, as do gases, so that only barriers and force can keep them apart. Fire leaps toward the sun, the elemental fire, and is so eager to join other fires that objects with the least dryness, lacking the ingredients necessary to resist, will enable it to break out. In the same way, those who share the one rational spirit are eager to join their own kind. Nay, even more eager, since the tendency to mix and mingle with their own kind is in proportion to their superiority over other things. Note, for example, that in animals without reason we find bees in swarms, cattle in herds, birds in flocks, and similar love groupings. The vital spirit present in these makes the grouping tendency much stronger than it is in plants or rocks or trees. And in rational creatures, we see cities and friendships, families and assemblies, while in wartime there are treaties and truces. And in the case of superior things like stars, we discover a kind of unity in separation. The higher we rise on the scale of being, the easier it is to discern a connection, even among things separated by vast distances. Look at what happens now. Only rational creatures now forget their attraction to one another. Only among them do we fail to see convergence and agreement. And even as they flee from one another, they keep running into themselves, for nature is too strong for them. Pay close attention, and you'll see what I mean. You're more likely to find a clod of earth detached from the earth than a man entirely cut off from humankind. 10. Everything bears fruit. Man, God, the universe, each in its own season. It doesn't matter that this manner of speaking is customarily reserved for the vine and other plants. Reason also bears fruit, both for itself and for everything else, and all its fruit tastes of sweet reasonableness. 11. If you can, change their evil ways by teaching them. If that doesn't work, remember that kindness is a virtue you possess for this very situation. The gods themselves are kind to such men, and sometimes even assist them in their efforts to become healthy or wealthy or famous. You can do the same. What's stopping you? 12. Work hard, not like a slave who looks for pity or praise, but as one who strives single-mindedly to discharge his social obligations. 13. Today I got out of trouble, or rather, I got trouble out of me. The trouble was not outside, but inside, and depended on my point of view. 14. Everything's the same. Experience is banal. Time is fleeting, and matter is corrupt. It's just what it was in the days of those we've buried. 15. Outside the door lies the world of things, a world unto itself. Things have no knowledge of themselves, nor can they speak for themselves. What can know and speak for them? The discerning mind. 16. Good and evil lie in a rational and social being's deeds, not in his feelings. Likewise, virtue and vice are terms applied to deeds, not feelings. 17. To a stone thrown up in the air, there is no evil in falling, or good in rising. 18. Delve into what motivates and governs them, and you will expose the critics you fear and see what poor critics they are of themselves. 19. All is change. You yourself are continuously changing and being destroyed bit by bit. So is the whole universe. 20. Another's wrongdoing. Leave it alone. 21. The conclusion of an activity, the end or what might be called the death of an impulse or opinion, there's no evil in these. Look at the various stages of life: childhood, boyhood, manhood, old age. Each ended in a kind of death. Was it so dreadful? Think now about the life you lived with your grandfather, then with your mother, then with your father. Looking at these and all the other changes, transformations, and endings that have happened in your life, ask yourself, was there anything to be feared in all of this? No. No more than in the end, the cessation, the transformation of life itself. 22. Make haste to examine your own mind, the mind of the universe, and the mind of your neighbor. Your own mind to make sure it is just. The mind of the universe to remind yourself of what you are apart. Your neighbor's mind to figure out whether he acted knowingly or out of ignorance, and while doing this, to reflect that he is your brother. 23. Just as you are a part of the whole community, each of your actions should contribute to the whole life of the community. Any action of yours that fails, directly or remotely, to make this contribution fragments the life of the community and jeopardizes its unity. It's a rebellious act, like the man in a town meeting who holds himself aloof and refuses to come to any agreement with his neighbors. 24. Children's temper tantrums, games of make-believe, and little breaths sustaining corpses. Homer's underworld is more solid than this. 25. Get at the underlying cause of a thing and study it apart from its material effects. Then determine how long this type of cause can sustain its effects. 26. You have suffered 1,000 ills because you are not content to be ruled by reason as nature intended. Stop. Enough. 27. When people hate or blame you or say hurtful things about you, look deeply into their hearts and see what kind of people they are. You'll see how unnecessary it is to strain after their good opinion. Yet, you must still think kindly of them. They are your neighbors. The gods help them as they do you, by dreams and oracles, to win their heart's desires. 28. Up and down, from age to age, the world's repeating cycles are the same. Either the cosmic mind initiates everything individually, in which case, welcome whatever it initiates. Or else it initiated things once for all time, and every subsequent effect serves also as a cause. Destiny or atoms, what does it matter? If God is discharging every detail, then all is well. And if everything's a matter of chance, still, you don't have to be ruled by chance. The earth will soon cover us all. Then the earth itself will change, and that changed earth will change again, and then again, changing into eternity. Anyone who contemplates these endless waves of change and transformation will look with indifference on every mortal thing. Anyone who contemplates these endless waves of change and transformation will look with indifference on every mortal thing. 29. The cosmic cause is an onrushing flood that carries all before it. How piddling are these little men who play the statesman and imagine they act like philosophers? Drooling toddlers. What does it take to be a man? Do what nature demands at this moment. Just do it, if you can, and don't be looking around to see if someone is watching. Don't look for Plato's Republic either. Be content if you can take a small step and know that even this is no mean feat. For you're not going to change their hearts, and failing that, all is pretense. Only slavish obedience and whining submission are possible. Go ahead and tell me about Alexander, Philip, or Demetrius. If they were schooled by nature, that's their business. But if they merely acted the part of tragic heroes, no one has condemned me to follow their lead. Simplicity and modesty are the fruits of philosophy. Keep me from becoming pompous and proud. 30. Look down from the sky at all the herds of men, their countless ceremonies, their endless voyages to and fro in both calm and storm, and the amazing diversity of creatures that are born, make a life with one another, and disappear. Imagine the life of those who lived long ago, or the life of those who will live after you are dead, or the life now being lived in distant foreign lands. How many don't even know your name? How many who do will soon forget it? How many who praise you today will slander you tomorrow? Memory, fame, and the like, all counterfeit. 31. When facing whatever happens outside your control, be calm. When taking action for which you are responsible, be fair. In other words, whether acting or reacting, your aim is the aid and betterment of others, in fulfillment of nature's laws. 32. Many of the things that trouble you are easily disposed of, for they are all in your mind. Instead of dwelling on them in such cramped quarters, why not inhabit spacious chambers by taking into your mind the whole wide world, the vast expanse of eternity, the swift succession of change in the smallest parts of everything? How short is the span between birth and death? How bottomless the abyss before birth, and boundless the gulf after death. 33. What you now see will soon perish, and those who watch it perish will pass away themselves no less quickly. The person who outlines all his friends will join the friend he lost as a boy in the grave. 34. Examine their guiding principles. What sorts of things do they go after? What sorts of people inspire their love and admiration? Cast a cold eye on their naked little souls. These are the same who think that their jeers sting or their cheers warm? What presumption! 35. Loss and change. Two words for the same thing. Nature rejoices in change. Through her, all things come into being and are arranged in the same way as they were in the beginning, and will be to the end. How then can you say that everything is coming out badly and is bound to come out badly in the end? How then can you say that not all the gods in heaven have the power to set things right? How then can you say that an ill wind is fated to blow through the world forever? 36. The decay at the core of everything renders water, dust, bones, stench. Marble is simply age-hardened slabs of earth. Gold and silver, sediments of earth. Fine clothing, the hair of animals, and purple dye, the blood of fish. Our very breath is the same, constantly passing from one lung to the next. 37. Enough of this pathetic way of life, this continual complaining and aping of others. Why worry? There's nothing new for you to get all worked up about. Do the causes of things disturb you? Then look to them. Or is it the things themselves? Then take a hard look at them. Formal cause and material effect, that's all there is. What matters at this late date is to be simpler and better in the eyes of God. This is so whether you ponder the meaning of life for 300 years or 3. 38. If he did wrong, then he harms himself. And what if he did no wrong? 39. Either everything springs from a single intelligent source that rules it as the mind does the body, in which case no part should complain about what is organized for the good of the whole. Or everything is made up of atoms, randomly mixing and dispersing. So why do you worry? Say to your true, independent, and governing self, you're dead. You're a rotting corpse. You've decided to become an actor and play a wild beast running with the herd. Well then, eat grass. 40. Either the gods are powerful or they are powerless. If they are powerless, why bother praying? But if they are powerful, why not ask them to free you from the fear or desire or sorrow caused by something, rather than asking them to give or withhold the thing itself? If the gods help men at all, this is surely the way they do it. But you might object, the gods have left these things up to me. Well, if that is the case, is it not better to use freely what is left up to you than to beg slavishly for what is out of your hands? Who told you that the gods do not also help us with the things they leave up to us? Begin to pray this way and see what happens. One person prays, "Help me seduce this woman." But you pray instead, "Prevent me from lusting after her." Another person prays, "Rid me of my enemy." But you pray, "Rid me of the desire to be rid of my enemy." Yet another, "Do not take my dear child from me." But you, "May I not fear the loss of my child." Turn your prayers in this direction and see what comes of it. 41. During my illnesses, says Epicurus, I never talked about my aches and pains or bothered those who came to see me with such trifles. Rather, I continued to discuss the fundamental principles of science, in particular how the mind, while fully aware of all the body's movements, remains unmoved and attends to its own good. Nor did I submit to the doctors, Epicurus continues, and give them a chance to boast of their medical expertise and make a fuss over me. But I just lived my life in good health and spirits. Whether in sickness, if you are sick, or in any other circumstances, be like Epicurus. Let no difficulty or hardship cause you to abandon philosophy or to tune into the gossip of the foolish and uneducated. On this piece of advice, all schools of philosophy agree. Keep to the task at hand, and to the tool you possess for completing it. 42. Whenever somebody's shameless behavior offends you, immediately ask yourself, can there be a world without shameless people in it? Of course not. Don't demand the impossible. This is just another one of those shameless people whom the world cannot be without. Keep the same question handy for scoundrels, cheaters, and other kinds of wrongdoers. By bearing in mind that there are bound to be people like this, you will find individuals like this easier to endure. At the same time, ask yourself, what virtue has nature given me to cope with this vice? The antibody against loutish behavior, for example, is gentleness. Against every vice, there is a power to combat it, and broadly speaking, you have the power to help any man find his way. The wrongdoer is, after all, merely missing his true mark and has lost his way. Besides, How has he harmed you? None of those with whom you're upset has done a thing to impair your ability to think, and no evil or harm can come to you, except your thinking let it. What's so bad or surprising about the ignoramus who acts out of ignorance? Find fault instead with yourself for failing to anticipate his offensive behavior. Your ability to reason should have told you that he would misbehave, but you refused to listen and are now shocked by his misbehavior. Indeed, whenever you feel inclined to blame someone for deceit or ingratitude, turn the accusation upon yourself. Obviously, the fault lies with you if you trusted a liar to keep his word, or if you did a good deed with some string attached, and without expecting the doing of the deed to be its own reward. Having done a good deed, what more do you want? Isn't it enough to have acted in harmony with your nature? Do you need to be paid for it as well? Do the eyes demand payment for seeing, or the feet wages for walking? Just as these organs were made for what they do and find fulfillment in doing what they were made to do, so too are men made by nature for one another. Whenever they perform a good deed or contribute to the common good in some way, they do what they were made to do and receive all that is theirs.